And what about the challenges, guys? We talked through the positives. There's obviously plenty, but I think it's good to give a bit of a balanced overview of what it's actually like living and working there. That it's not necessarily, a holiday. The tax-free money is great, but what sort of pressures and what sort of challenges are people going to face?
So clearly, I think we've sort of mentioned it a bit in some of the earlier points, but because the programs are so aggressive in the projects here, obviously that leads to some pretty intense times in terms of working hours. It's not always the case. I mean, all of us on this call are striving to make sure that we stop that and reduce that as much as possible with the teams. But just because of where we are, the kind of expectations, these crazy programs have become the norm, and we have to do it. So sometimes that means that you're working weekends and you're working evenings to get things out. Like I say, not all the time, but when we are all doing our best to stop it, but it is part for the course over here. You will work longer hours. No one on this call does a 9 to 5. I'm sure of it. I think the regular hours would be, I don't know what they are. I think it's probably 9 hours a day. Is it the standard hours? I would suggest that everyone on this call is doing more than that on a weekly basis. So that is one of the challenges for sure. But I mean, it's rewarding in its way because you get to see designed and constructed lots of projects in your time when you're over here. Like I said earlier, in the UK, you might work on a couple of projects that never get built, or it takes 3 or 4 or 5 years to get them finished. Here, you could work on the same 5 years, you might see 20 projects through, or more. So the rewards are, in that respect, are great. But yeah, there is a very strong work ethic in the region.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that if look, from a pure work perspective, if you're going to pick a challenge, it's the pressure. The pace can be utterly relentless on projects, and to the point of unreasonableness and beyond. I mean, famously, again, me and Scott worked on a job, and I think we delivered something like between 50 and 100, I forget the exact number, individual buildings in the space of 2 months. It was the most insane thing I've ever been involved in on Jumeirah Open Beach. It was, people working night and day to get this thing done. And we got it done by hook or by crook, but there were people sleeping under their desks. It was that kind of job, and that does happen here, and there's no denying it. But as I say, there are a lot of rewards, but from a work perspective, the pressure and the pace can get fairly extreme, I would say.
Yeah,
and I'd say there's competition as well. A lot of people do want to relocate to the Middle East, and that means that there's always going to be someone potentially who work that bit extra harder than you. So you have to step up your game, work smart, really be effective with your time, prioritizing tasks, and it makes sense to read some books on sort of internal project and time management. And we do help some of our staff do that, because you can give them a list of 10, 12 things, and then they just get a bit flustered, and it's about sitting down and going, right, what needs to be delivered on which days this week? What can we push to the next week? Actually, how long is that going to take you? Okay, that's going to take you 1 hour, 2 hours. Well, we haven't got 40 hours there. We've actually got 30 hours of work. So here's another 5 tasks. If you actually break it down into time-based, then you can manage it. But there is the client expectation, the late night phone calls from the client at 10, 11 o'clock at night, or first thing in the morning, or on a weekend when you're trying to enjoy some family time. And when you get to sort of like more senior positions, it's expected, because the life and the work kind of mix in together and become one. So you really have to enjoy what you do and have a passion for it. And none of us would be here if we didn't have a passion for MEP design in our various different sectors, and sort of live and breathe it, and also believe in what we're doing. I think Irfan, you said about leaving a legacy and working on these projects which will be looked back in 50 years time, 100 years time, and you can be proud that you can pass to your grandchildren and say, I was there when that project went up, I was involved in it. And that's going back to a positive, but that's the positive that comes with the challenge of the demands from the clients and expectations.
Yeah. And I think, client expectation, it's always very high in the Middle East. They want the biggest, the largest, the latest innovation. Yeah, but they want it in, half the time compared to like a UK project.
And
a quarter of the budget.
Yeah. And it's just something you've got to manage, and I think one thing that I think is a challenge that, people, coming out to the Middle East will face is, you're working in, huge teams, and not everyone's located in the Middle East. You could have architects, in America. You could have, a support team in, India or the Philippines. And, you've got to be agile and adaptable because things are moving around all the time. And like Nick said at the start, sometimes you've got to make decisions very quickly, with not, without having all the kind of the information you need to make an informed decision. And I think that's just something that, comes with the territory of working on these kind of, huge complex projects that, happen, frequently in the Middle East, that you just got to get to grips with when you come out.
And I think it's fair to say that it isn't for everybody, and some people will come out and they'll try it, and they either won't be able to adapt to the pace of life, they won't be able to make those decisions, that maybe they're not very good at time management, and they will hate it, and they'll be back in the UK in 6 months to a year, and that's just being honest. It's not trying to put anybody off. It is that kind of place. Some people just won't adapt to it.
Yeah. Some people get drastically homesick, don't they?
Yeah.
I was going to say as well, you're actually right. Obviously we're talking a lot about work, but you need to, obviously the world's a smaller place than it was before, and obviously technology like this allows you to stay in contact with people. But the truth of the matter is, if you're coming out of the UK, you're taking a suitcase, and you might be on your own, or you might be with a partner, and you're packing up and you're moving to the other side of the world, to a culture you don't know, to people you don't know. And as Scott and I think a couple of other people mentioned before, generally the community here is extremely welcoming because everybody's done it before and everybody understands what you're going through.
They know the pain.
But I mean, just from a personal example for myself, I like when me and my wife had my first child, I went from worrying about what beach I was going to be dancing on to the next day standing there, or not next day, a couple of days later, with a newborn baby, and because I didn't have my family with me, I didn't have grandparents, I didn't have other people or a support network that you need in that situation. It was just us, and it was scary, it's those kind of things that you don't necessarily think about, and you've got to think about as well, your family. What happens to a member of your family, and you're 24 hours away at the absolute earliest before you're able to get on a plane and go home. And there are certain times and certain things that happen that make you realize you're a long way from home. And again, that needs to be factored into the thinking as well.
Yeah, that's definitely the one that certainly resonates with me quite a lot now, especially a few years back when my father got very ill, very, very short notice, and it was like, oh, you need to get home now, yeah. And the next thing you know, you're in a taxi trying to get to the airport just to get on any flight back to the UK to get there in time. Fortunately, I managed to do it, but that's when you start realizing you're a long way from home. Yeah.